Hello, everyone. Welcome to Open Mic Night Take Two. So Mark saved me. I'm covering for Father Eric because he is on a one-day pilgrimage to, I think, to the Shrine of Our Lady of the Plains, which is the first I'd ever heard of this. And so he asked me to cover for him, and I had numerous technical difficulties that Mark reached out his hand and pulled me up from the depths, and here we are. So I've got Mark, I've got Adam with me, and Mark, whenever you can, if you drop the invite in the comment stream, because it is an open mic night. That way other people can get on if they will behave civilly, because that is the basis for being allowed to participate in a common forum, is that you act like a grown-up adult who knows how to, have manners and be part of the greater good that's going on here. But yeah, so Adam and I were just talking about some memories, because Adam was telling me about his memories of being over in the States when he was very, very young. And so this is a story that I think probably, I'm sure Mark would find this interesting. A lot of people would. So this lady that I met when I was at the English Labrie back in 2014, somewhere in there. She was from South Africa, and she had this younger sister. And so what made me think of this is Adam was saying that he was talking about memories and pictures and like trying to figure out the difference between them. So this lady had a younger sister who, when she was 16 years old, had complete and permanent amnesia. So she was able to form new memories. She didn't have short-term memory loss. She never told me what it was, but there's an accident and all the long-term memories before that were gone. Now, what's super weird is that, so that, they'd show her the photo albums. She'd pick up the stuff from hearing them talk about things. It got to the point where she couldn't tell the memories that she had actually formed after her amnesia event and the ones that she had just pieced together from imagining stories and looking at pictures. And she would have to ask her family, was that before the event or after the event? It's like, oh yeah, that beach vacation. She's like, yeah, I remember that. Well, wait, do I remember that? Was that before the event or after the event? Oh, that was after the event. So yeah, that you were there for that. Except even to say that is weird.
Yeah,
so
that's really weird.
This whole notion that we just remember things is way weirder. So when you think about what do photographs do, how do stories about our past affect? It's a weird one. I've been chewing on that one for almost a decade now, and it still makes me think.
We know nothing about that. We just tell ourselves we know how memory works, and it's very strange.
Yeah,
it's quite strange.
Or I mean, like a slightly different tack on that. Like how many conversations do you have if you'll just you can't think of something? I was doing this. I was driving somewhere with my family, and I was trying to remember the lyrics to a song that I hadn't listened to in a couple of years, and it was all gone. Sitting there talking about something completely different, and then 3 minutes later, I had the entire chorus in my head.
Yes. That happened to me earlier today. I was trying to make a joke to Mark, and then I was like, it just drops. It's like a wise man once said, boom, like what comes next? And then it's like a minute later, I'm like, oh, of course, that's what I meant,
Yeah. It's so weird. Or I was talking with Corey and Karen on the Meaning Code about the Ransom trilogy, the C.S. Lewis's Space trilogy, and I couldn't remember the name of this place there. And 2 minutes later, I was like, oh, it's Meldalorn. It's like, I wasn't sitting there talking about it. I wasn't trying out sounds.
No.
So Mark, your whole point about this notion of thinking is language and all this stuff about how much we know, any rate, there's clearly a lot that we're not privy to that's totally going on in there, 100% going on in there. Actually, I think I just saw on Randos that you just did your last live stream was on the unconscious. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you touch on any of that stuff?
I mean, I indicated it. I didn't address it directly, right? Well, because you don't have to. You have to tell people, no, there's a bunch of stuff going on that you aren't consciously aware of, and you can't be consciously aware of, and it's okay. But also it's there, and that explains why things are happening to you that you can't explain consciously because they're not conscious.
because they're not conscious. Well, I was listening to Jackson. Yeah, he was. I met him at the Chino conference. He was on with Karen, and they're going back and forth about art. And one of the things that Karen brought up that I thought was really interesting was talking about style, like recognizable style in art as being these internalized decisions and values, so that when you paint, you can paint anything and it still looks like you. And what I thought was interesting about that is I just hadn't made that connection before, that when it actually becomes, say, part of your painting or writing or speaking style or whatever it is, those are the things that happen when you're not thinking about them. It's not the things that you're consciously doing. Everyone recognizes that, and generally they dislike the things that you're consciously doing.
Those are the boring things.
Yes.
And that was part of the point of my stream, was when you do boring things, when you do things consciously that are rote, they become boring. And what that means is you're trying to take over an unconscious process with your conscious mind for no good reason. Like, you shouldn't do that. It causes anxiety.
Oh, that's interesting. Man, that
you would like that stream, Ted.
What's that, Mark?
You would like that stream. It was a good monologue. I hit it out of the park. Yeah.
I'll see if I can get it. It's these days my opportunities for actually just listening to stuff on YouTube, if it doesn't make it over to podcast land.
Well, I'm gonna put my stuff up on podcast soon. I just got to.
Oh, are you? Oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, great.
We'll
Let me know when you do, because I'll be there for it. So there's a couple of things that makes me think of, and I'm sure, probably, speaking of monologues, Mark, you've probably noticed this too. But before I was Catholic, I was at this little Protestant church, and I'd preach like once a month there. And when you start like being responsible for speaking for 40 minutes uninterrupted, you realize that all you can do is take your conscious mind. All it can do is like say, hey, is the process going generally in the right direction? But because you're not pausing and you're not getting feedback and having time to ponder things, you're just saying stuff. So it ends up being 70 to 80% unconscious. Would be my estimate. Yeah. And it's just weird, the stuff that comes out. And I'm sure you know this, like, a lot of us are really verbal people in this little corner. And it's like, you say stuff that you're like, dude, that's brilliant. I had no idea I knew that. I had no idea I thought that.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Well, that happened. What was it? I want to say 35 minutes ago. I was talking we were on BOM. John Mullen was on, and I wanted to talk to him. And Alexander was there, and it was a nice little reunion. And I came up with this thing. It took me 2 tries to get it. Emergence is the process by which things appear, but emanation is the process which brings them into being. Yeah. And I was like, hey, that's a pretty good definition. I didn't know I knew that.
Yeah.
Emergence is the process by which things appear, and emanation is the process by which they have being. That's interesting, Mark. That actually really connects with Daniel Toma. I've been trying to work through his stuff, but he talks about perfect and imperfect being. Sorry, perfect and it's not being. Perfect and imperfect processes. And I think that there's probably there's some overlap there, because he talks about how, like, it's perfect and imperfect something. I can't remember. But at any rate, it's like, I mean, his example is the process of painting up a picture, and then the other thing being knowing what the painting is going to be, right? It's where the idea comes from, and then the way that it gets instantiated. That strikes me as being very much in line with what you're trying to articulate there.
Yeah. Well, and the Karen Wong talks about this, right? She says, whatever I'm painting doesn't come from me, right? It comes from somewhere else. It's like, I think all artists have that experience. Hey, Chad.
Mr. Chad, hello.
How's it going, fellas?
Good.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good to see you, Adam. It's been a while.
Good to see you too, Chad.
Looking sharp, dude. Nice.
Thanks.
What you been up to these days?
Well, I'm in California at the moment for job training, and yeah. So
just got back from church,
and I just got back from church, so
there you go.
Would explain the get up. Yeah. So, and I was graciously given a lift to church by a family I met here, actually. twice now. They've been so generous as to let me come along with them. So
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Is it
it
your
really
first
is
time in the
an honor.
States?
Yeah,
We've talked
yeah,
about
I'm in Fremont near San Francisco.
Nice.
Oh, further north. Yeah, it's been ages
Yeah,
since I've
not
been.
in South California. I don't know what that looks like. I mean, here I look outside and it looks like Sicily. To be honest, I don't think I'd want to go any further south.
Well, it looks. You know what? Southern California. I hadn't consciously been in Southern California before Chino, and it actually reminded me of Lima, Peru, like so much. It felt
Wow.
almost exactly the same as Lima, Peru. It was very strange. Like
Yes.
architecture is similar. You've got like the coast. There's this weird thing about the West Coast where you've got really clear skies and then haze just like moves in.
Yes.
And so you've got really low level clouds coming in over like brilliant blue skies, and then the plants are all the same. And then you've got this thing where it's like city, and then these enormous barren mountains that just come like straight out of the city.
Yes, that's exactly the view. And then you see that like on the Golden Gate Bridge or whatever, but not just the bridge, just the fog, right? So one of the days we went up there, we were looking to find the bridge, and the first day we went, we could see it, and we're like, okay, that's fine. The second day we went, the first time we went over, it's like it was shrouded in fog. It's like, oh no.
Did you go and see any of the sequoias at all?
Yes, I think we did. We also went to the Muir Woods Park thing. We actually went to the beach down there. When I saw the beach, it reminded me of sometimes when I was in Oregon when I was a little child, of the dark silty sand. That's really like, I look at that and it's like, yeah, I've never seen sand like this. Like not even in Ireland, I've seen kind of sand like that. It's very, for me, it's very particular, and it reminded me of beaches in Oregon, Washington.
I love the sequoias. Those big trees are just so breathtaking, dude. Oh my goodness.
It's funny to say
something
that.
That's like 2,000 years old. Like you're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been sitting there for a long time. I'd love to get up in the canopy of some of those trees. That would just be amazing. They end up growing full-size trees in like rotted duff in crotches in those trees. I mean, it's unbelievable. They're like, each of those trees ends up being a miniature forest in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, because look, the reality is a fractal. Trees are fractals. That's why trees end up looking like tiny worlds. Yeah.
Self-similar fractal.
Self-similar. Thank you. Yes. Self-similar fractal.
Look,
there's a reason that so many mythologies, they're like, yeah, the world's a tree. And you're like, the world does not look like a tree. And then you sit with it for a little longer. You're like, yeah, no, the world's a tree. The world's definitely a tree.
Yeah. Can't do it without the fungus though, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Those fungi are wild.
Fungus blows my mind.
That's the hidden matriarchy, the hidden fungus.
Oh,
Unreal.
that's an interesting one, Mark.
Well, I was talking to John Molland. That's the book he's working on, the hidden matriarchy. So we were just talking about that, and it's like,
that's
okay,
interesting. Yeah. No, I mean, it's really, when you think about what that's a good one. I'm gonna have to chew on that for a little bit. That's interesting. Speaking of big trees, I spent the first part of the week cutting down really big trees. So
you
I know.
monster.
I know. So it's this family from church, and they live down in the bottoms. They moved here pretty recently. We've got these like 80, 90-foot trees on their property, and we've had some insane windstorms this year. And so this spring they looked at those trees and they're like, yeah, we're gonna push the forest back a little bit from our house. And so me and this friend of mine who's a tree climber, he was up in the trees doing the climbing. I was doing the rope work and the groundwork, and it's interesting. Being in that position where you trust the ropes and you trust your skill and you trust your coworker's skill, and that if any of those three fail, that like you're just smashing this roof to pieces. Yeah, it's an interesting place to. It's like it's a good thing. Like I think that it is healthy for people to spend at least some of their lives in high consequence situations, because all of life has consequences, and so like sometimes you just get to see it laid out there really obvious. Like it's like I mean, Chad, you get this. If you do a bad job with tile, it's like if you don't go back and rip it up and do it again, it's just there. Like it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. No, I like the high risk situation there. Like there's a guy I heard describing faith and trust is like faith is watching a master tightrope walker walking a wheelbarrow across a line, you know, and then faith is getting in the wheelbarrow. And
that's
you know,
great.
But we don't. I don't think we have enough real.
Is trust is getting in the wheelbarrow?
Yeah.
Trust is getting yeah.
But that's where faith grows, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's interesting because even in that, like with tree work, there's a sense of my friend who's a veterinary doctor. He talks about how like the conversation that happens all the time is, well, do my dog? Hi, Emma.
Hello.
You tracked us down. He talks all the time about how these pet owners come in. They're like, my dog's never gotten heartworms. He doesn't need heartworm medicine. And they're like, the reason they don't have heartworms is because they've always had heartworm medicine. And so there's this thing about like when you're doing tree work, you like, in one sense, you can trust the wrong things, because if you just trust your report, your record, and you start getting sloppy, then that trust was, let's say, founded wrongly. But if you trust doing things right, that's good trust. So there's this interesting thing in terms of, Chad, in terms of like, what you can't just look at the situation and say, I just trust the situation. You actually have to discern which part of it you're going to trust. Like which, are you going to trust your track record, or are you going to trust the skill, say, or something like that? Like those are actually different things. Because the space shuttles are sort of like the quintessential example of trusting the track record, where it's like, no, you don't trust the track record. You can't trust the track record. And so.
Yeah, it's what responsibility probably requires respect.
Yes. Well, there's a tremendous amount of respect that we have to have when we're working with a tree, right? Like you have to respect how easily it'll kill you. You know, so the second tree we did, my friend Shane spent 5 hours cutting back weight off of it because it was leaning over the house. Yeah, it was a long time. It takes patience too. So then we got two top lines in it, and I think we had them set 75 feet up in this tree, and we had one that was pulled off. It was just static tension because it had to balance out a whole bunch of branches that were 90 degrees to the direction we wanted it to fall, and we're pulling it straight up in the direction of the lean, which is weird. You would think you wouldn't. You'd think you'd want it to go like 90 degrees to the lean. Actually, if you're not going to drop it in the way it's leaning, you want to go 180 degrees. But I was in a tractor with the other top line, and I thought, yeah, we'll pull it over a little bit and then it'll go. So my friend, we do the face cut. He goes in with a back cut, and then he's putting the wedges in to work with the hinge, and and then he'll give me a signal, and I drive 10 inches forward.
Yeah.
I pulled the top of that tree 35 feet forward before it started coming over. And this is when you realize, like, yeah. But then, I mean, all this stuff is so mind blowing. So then you think about, you're like, okay, so how much am I pulling on that rope, and how much leverage do I have? I've got like an 80-foot lever on this thing.
Yes.
Right? And so you're thinking about the ratio there, and like, how much force am I putting on that hinge in terms of torque? I don't know. It was easily in the 50,000 pound range. I mean,
dude. Yeah, dude. And you got to be careful, because like, say if it just gives way, that chain just come back and kill you.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't haul with chains or cables.
Yeah, use ropes for that reason. Yeah. Yeah. Anytime I see a cable under tension, it just, if I don't know exactly how much weight is on that cable and the history of that cable, it makes me feel queasy.
Yes. Yes.
I've seen some people fell some trees like very skillfully, like between, like a 50, 60 foot tree, felling it right between like inside of like a 10-foot window.
Yeah.
Between buildings and shit. It's like, oh man, and like that's a skill, man.
What's so interesting about it as a skill though, Chad, is that unless like even the best case is if you're working with like cedar or pine or spruce or something, where it basically is just this homogeneous, quasi-homogeneous pole with like branches you can take all the branches off of. I mean, like hardwoods here, now they're splitting out and going all over the place and growing in crazy angles. So if you want to do that, you can't just apply this algorithm of this much force in this direction and this and this and this. It's like you're in it, you're constantly evaluating it, and all of your experience has to operate at a very high level because you can't just tell. Like you can't just tell in the sense of you can't work out the maths, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Right? There's an embodiment that has to go into an experiential memory.
Yes, I like that. It's an experiential memory. Absolutely. And so
participatory knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right, Mark. Well, Emma, what are you up to besides knitting or crocheting? You're knitting.
I am knitting. I've just kind of been hanging out. Doing a lot of like house stuff because I get back to school. Doing some like prep work this next week, and then classes actually start next week. So I've been trying to like, have my apartment set up like a functioning adult before that.
That's overrated.
That sounds good.
Yeah. It's a trick.
So like I organized my pantry. That was exciting.
Look, it's everyday stuff, right?
Yeah, lots of everyday stuff, which is nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to sort of settle into that a little bit before doing all the academic-y stuff again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you think about? Have you had any further thoughts on fairy stories? Have you come to any great insight after some days of it fermenting under the surface?
I don't know if I've had that much. I'm always really curious to see what other people think of conversations. But
yeah.
I thought it was a really great conversation. It's a really great essay. It's really fun to talk about.
I couldn't believe how much was in there.
Yeah.
There is. You guys. One of the things that I think you guys would probably find interesting is there's two places. This is Tolkien. It's like an essay based on a lecture that he gave at one of the Scottish colleges, and just
on Beowulf or what?
It's on fairy stories.
Okay.
So he did one on Beowulf as well. That's excellent, but
I haven't gotten.
That's called, I think, on Monsters and Men, right?
Monsters and Critics. Monsters and Critics. Yes. Yeah, but there's some there's just like the amount of stuff that he's saying that was just like, there's just all the stuff is clicking. One of them is he says to ask what the origin of stories is, of fairy stories is, however qualified. No, it was just stories. He says how to ask what the origin of stories is to ask what the origin of language and the origin of the mind is, which I thought was really interesting. And he also says that in this world that the incarnate mind, stories, and language are co-evolve. So
you can't actually separate them. Try doing anything without a story. Good luck.
Yeah. What do I think about the Green Knight? I've only read parts of it. I mean, I know the outline of the story. It's one of those things that I look at and I think, maybe when I'm wiser, I'll understand it. You look at stuff, you're just like, I don't get this. And immediately it's not because there's nothing there, but just because you don't get it. That's how I feel about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Some people don't do that, Ted.
Some people feel about Till We Have Faces every time I read it.
So Mark, one of my friends in undergrad told me that he was an English major. He came back just like fuming because some punk had the nerves to be like, Homer is just like, everyone just thinks way too much about Homer. Homer's like totally overdone. I was like, and who are you exactly?
Well, somebody tweeted out, and I don't know if it was at Cale Zeldin or whatever, but it was part of something I saw from Cale Zeldin, tweeted out that, oh, I used to think that Moby Dick was this boring story about whatever, and now I reread it recently and found out it's completely insane.
Dude, Moby Dick is crazy. I read it for the first time 2
It
years
is.
ago.
That's wild.
It is not what anyone thinks it is. Oh my goodness, dude.
We read it in my great books class at Hillsdale because one of the English professors told the English professor I took that class with that there was no way you could get through Moby Dick in a sophomore great books seminar. And she immediately said, watch
Hold my
me.
beer.
And so we do Moby Dick every semester. She teaches Moby Dick every semester because someone told her she couldn't.
That's the thing that I noticed. So we do this Plato book club on the Republic on Saturdays, and then of course it came up in the stream that I did with Adam and Manuel yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Because somebody made an allusion to the cave, and I'm like, I do not know what these people read that they're talking about Plato's cave the way they are, but they are wrong. The stuff they're saying is not in the book. And so the degree to which people like even John Vervaeke or, even my buddy Jack, Dr. Linton Jack, who does the Ancient Greece Declassified podcast, put stuff in that story that absolutely, in some cases, refuted in the text into there is amazing.
Yeah.
And so you've got both sides, right? Like you could have a comment like we had earlier today in the stream, right? Where somebody just says something that bears no resemblance to what I said, right? And you could imply whatever you want, but that's the problem. You can imply whatever you want. So for example, I'll just give you one clear example that's in the text. I read it on Saturday morning for the third time, by the way, because reasons. The fire in Plato.
Yeah.
Plato says that is the sun. So when people say you leave the cave and see the sun, Plato does not say that in the book. He completely refutes that that's even possible. He relates the fire in the cave to the sun. So there's no leaving. Nobody leaves the cave. That never happens in book 7. None of this happens. This is all stuff that people infer and plug into the story. So yeah, if you think you're smart and you understand it in a banal way, you think Moby Dick's kind of boring and not insane. On the other hand, if you read it and you go, oh, I see what people are on about Plato's cave. It's really about the individual breaking free from the chains and going outside and being blinded by the sun. That's not true. None of that is there. It goes both ways.
I heard this story from a priest teaching catechism, and so they're going through the church's doctrine on the Trinity. And this lady is like, oh, thank you. I understand it perfectly now. And he goes, well, then I need to explain it again because that's not the response that you should ever have to the Trinity.
Yes.
Yes. So, yeah.
All right, guys.
There's so many things that are interesting about that because
Bye, Chad. Good to see you.
Good seeing you, Chad. Thanks for coming, man.
Later.
There's so many things that it tells you about like what the person like wants to see in those stories. And this is why I generally try to circle the same like 8 or 10 things over and over and over because look, I think John Vervaeke is quite a bit more intelligent than me. And if he can say things like that about the Plato's cave, I'm like, yeah, I should probably be careful about what I say about stuff.
Right. Well, and that's the problem. It's the lack of humility. And we've been programmed by this postmodern critique idea to believe that we can read Moby Dick once and understand it, or we can read Moby Dick as a 15-year-old and we'll understand it just as well as we would if we had 15 more years of life experience, or that you can read Plato's Republic and understand the cave from one reading. I mean, the book 7. So I have taken every Saturday I read the first half of the book because I know we're not going to get it through anymore. So I read it and then I jump into the book club. That's how I do it. Right. It's just a discipline for reasons I've had to read this 3 times because 3 times we've started the book club and not, we just, whatever, people weren't there. So this time I actually took notes. Yeah. And I just took 42 points of notes on the first, roughly half of book 7. Yeah. So, and each time I find something in it where I'm like, no, wait, it's worse. These people are lying at a different, at a bigger level than I thought. Like this is more of a lie that I thought the first time I read it. And it just, because we don't have that humility that like it's Plato, dude. Like you're not. Come on, it's freaking Plato. You're not gonna understand it. That's not. And if you think you understood the whole thing, you've got a problem with yourself. Like you need to address that. It's not a Harlequin romance. That's a different thing. That's entertainment. There are books that are not entertainment that are deep, and you could easily argue that the Republic is fiction. Nothing isn't in it isn't made up. It's a made up story. Like it's made, but it's not fiction, man. It's not fiction.
Well, I mean, and Tolkien is actually making a very similar point on fairy stories, and I'd be curious if you agree with me on this. That he's basically, I mean. What's interesting is you have to read it a little bit. I mean, just because of the things that we're thinking about now, like you see an emphasis that I just don't think Tolkien actually put there. But the thing that Peterson came up with, which is, why do we pay attention to some stories for forever? Well, we should probably really pay attention to those stories. And that's basically what Tolkien is saying, is like the people who don't take fairy stories seriously don't understand that these are the stories that we've been telling for thousands of years. And so we should probably shut up and listen when people start telling them to us.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's what we've lost. That's part of my point about the recession of the church and the fact that the difference between the meaning crisis and crisis of faith is that if you don't have exposure to these things, then you've got a deficit that you cannot overcome by yourself at all, ever. It's not possible for you to fix that on your own. And then so then the problem, and it is a problem, who do you rely on, or what do you rely on? What church, what tradition, whatever, to get you out of that problem? And the Western answer to that is what I call Western Buddhism, which does not resemble Eastern Buddhism at all. And that's been the problem all along. We have the man, the myth, the legend himself.
Oh, hello. There he is. Father Eric,
we made it back.
We're exiles, wanderers in a foreign land.
I noticed. Yeah, I am sorry. Sorry, I thought everything was just going to work out perfectly, and it didn't.
But it's great. Humility. We're all here. No, it's wonderful.
We're all here. And now Mark is surrounded by Catholics.
We've got him at last.
That's right.
Amazing. Yeah. No, but Mark, you're bringing up reading that part of Plato over and over. Yeah, I think Emma, I don't know if this was actually in our conversation or when we weren't recording, but when I brought up St. Augustine's parsing of the word religion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
we either threw it on the very end or it came up after we stopped recording.
Yeah. Any rate, but there's religion to religio, to bind together, but then he also puts relegere, so to reread, is another aspect of religion, and then relegere, which is to re-choose. So those are his three readings of the word religion. It's to rebind, to reread, to read over and over again, and then to re-choose. And I'm like, okay, wow.
Oh, that's mind-blowing. That's good. That's good. Because Vervaeke only does the religio part. He doesn't do the other two. But the other two are the important part that require tradition and all these other pieces that we'll say some people throw out. They might all be called Protestant, something like that. Anyway.
There are also the parts that if you're doing modern etymology rather than, we'll call it classical etymology for now. Like etymology the way the ancients and medievals would have done it, you're not going to pick up on those options. You're going to go for religio, rebind, because that's the one that's most likely the real etymology, and you're going to leave the other two out.
Real? Wait, hold on. You can't just drop that there. How would you classify the difference between, we'll say, recent etymology and classical etymology? Because there's a there for sure.
Because classical etymology, at least as I understand it, was more of a like, if it sounds like it works, and we look for any like meaning we can get out of it, and then especially like if it sounds like it works and there's a good deeper meaning there you go, it's a good etymology. But now we've got to look at the way language is developed, and we've got to do this scientifically, and we've got to figure out the real etymology of words.
You're hurting my brain, Emma. So let me tell you what I heard you say. I'm not claiming you said.
Okay.
I'm saying, this is what I heard. I did this trick in DC a couple of times, right? So what I heard you say was the sort of historical scientific version of etymology is what we're preferring over the more poetic and, we'll say, participatory based etymology of the past, where they were like, oh, this just kind of works, so it must be true.
We're not preferring
I think
anything.
you could put it that way.
We're not preferring anything.
I wouldn't necessarily say we here are preferring the modern scientific one.
Not us, we're the elitists.
But people in the academy definitely do.
Fair.
So I think I've got a great example from literature of that exact thing. And Emma, until you brought it up, I never saw this. But in I think it's the 11th chapter of Paralandra, where there's a fantastic inner monologue that I think is actually the core to the entire science fiction trilogy, where where he's having this conversation with God. It's God. And God says to him, hey, my name is also Ransom. And he's got this thing where he's like, I'm a philologist. He's a philologist. So he knew that Ransom meant, Randolph's son. It comes from Randolph's son. It has no connection with the Latin root for ransom. But he's like, but it was in that moment that he realized that there was a way to view the universe in which there was no accidents. And that this too, long before
that's C.S. Lewis pointing to this exact thing.
Yes. So what lets St. Augustine look at the word religion and say, hey, it means to rebind, it means to reread, it means to re-choose. He can do that because he believes that, let's say, there's actually a story to the universe. And so you can't reduce a word to its etymology to the material cause of the etymology, and that there's actually other things going on there besides some sort of blind evolutionary process in the formation of language. So
yeah, that's a good point.
That's great.
That's
great.
very much Lewis's medievalist coming out.
Yes. Well, that's sort of Paralandra. Paralandra goes back to the place where people believe that the heavens were the heavens and not space. And when you're in heaven, look, when you're in heaven, you see how everything fits together. Like that's what you do up there. Mm-hmm. And so he's gone into the heavens and he's given a heavenly etymology of his name. And so, yeah, I love it. But when you think about that, and you think about, like, I don't know, going to mass, it's like, what am I doing at mass? I'm being rebound. We're rereading. We're rereading and rereading and rereading and rereading and rereading. It's like, and
re-choosing.
Yeah.
Every time you go.
Yep. And you're re-choosing over and over and over. It's like, especially, the I confess, the Confiteor and all these prayers of you're putting yourself in that place over and over again to choose. Because
Domine non condignus, all of that.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you're like, how do I? Because it isn't. I mean, because we're all this stuff, and we've got to get all that stuff aimed towards God.
Yeah.
And you just have to do it over and over and over.
Well, that's interesting because that's almost like what you're saying there is that free will requires this constant reframing back to the baseline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
If you want to paint a fence white, you got to have a bucket of paint to keep on painting it.
Well, and my understanding is, like, that's kind of what repentance is about, right? That repentance is not.
Well, it's RE.
That's another good etymology, actually. Re-seeking.
Yeah.
Repeto.
Interesting. Oh, it's to re-seek. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, I hear the word repentance get, like, slammed by people who are all about the Greek word metanoia. And, like, I don't think I hear the Western notion of repentance being, oh, it's this tiny little narrow thing, but the East has got this idea of metanoia. And it's like, well, not when I actually hear like Western theologians and saints talking about what repentance is. I'm like, I don't know that you can actually take the word down and be like, it's just saying you're sorry. It's like, no, it's that turning. It's the turning back over and over and over.
Well, and honestly, saying you're sorry is really hard.
Yes.
like you kind of have to change a little on the inside when you don't want to do it and you know you have to.
Mm-hmm.
That's like you got to take something out there.
Yeah.
Painful.
Yeah. Which
yeah,
is
but
why
I don't,
it's so-
it's very strange that there's that Eastern view of it as well, because it's like the East is all so, there's so much room, and then it's like, yeah, but the West, oh no, we don't want anything to do with that. It's Mr. Miyagi. It's Mr. Miyagi syndrome all over again. It is Karate Kid.
Mr. Miyagi syndrome. Adam, you're
Yeah.
killing me.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's actually what it's like Daniel-san living with his working mother. Like there's no father present, and then it's just this Eastern man who's not very explicit because he doesn't speak English very well, and just kind of grunts, and it's like wax on, wax off.
And you're like, oh, there's
And that's
something
it.
there.
Well, he doesn't explain anything, right? And then you miss the point because it looks like Daniel's self-transforming into somebody who can do karate, but actually he's being provided with this framework that enables him to transform into a karate person. And that's actually very explicit in the movie, but everybody misses it when they talk about the movie, when they think about the movie.
Yeah, it's also just the kind of like coming of age story without the Western father figure. There is no Latin Christian father figure. It is only this Eastern, right, far Eastern, because he's from Okinawa, right? This far Eastern man who doesn't even speak very much English or whatever, right? So he's not. He's kind of part of it, but he's also not, because it's America. You can work it that way, and it's happening. I think it's happening on where I am at the moment, right? It's happening in California, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's in
So
California.
this is kind of the crossover of kind of far east and far west.
Yeah.
And Mr. Miyagi has the Medal of Honor, right? So it's the implication is like, well, what, like, all right, this guy seems to be great. Like, oh, well, what did Daniel-san's dad do then? I mean, who cares about him? I mean, where is he? Who knows?
Yeah.
Right.
And
they come
period.
from New Jersey. They come from the East Coast to the West Coast. Like, there's so much symbolism in that movie. It's like,
well, Mark, I mean, you brought up like Western Buddhism, and like, I think in some sense, because so one of my high school teachers was that like Berkeley, California Buddhist type in high school, and look, I know he had a really interesting place in my life. I'm really grateful for. At any rate, we'll just pass over that. He was also a phenomenal sculptor, which was really cool. But when Adam, your reading of the Karate Kid there, I think is so interesting, because I think that is what was going on with that generation, where the wisdom tradition of the West was absent from these people post World War II, and they looked over to the East and they didn't actually understand what the East was saying.
Right. Yeah.
But they didn't understand what the East was saying, but they got like the grunts and they got something to do, like mindfulness practices, and they say, hey, that'll make me the kind of kick butt guy that can, beat up on all the bullies in my life, which is not what karate is about.
Right.
But they don't understand. And so it's like they're like giving the East the thing that they want it to be that it isn't, and then they try to use that as a sort of substitute paternity.
Yeah, because go on.
But also, Ted, look closely. I could kick your ass as the skinny, useless kid who's been trained. Yeah. I've had the gnosis, the knowledge put in me to kick your ass as the skinny, useless kid who has no right to win the fight in a Western frame, to be fair. But I won't, because I'm better. So there's all kinds of stuff going on in that messaging.
Yeah.
And who's the enemy in it? Who is the big bad guy in it? It is like a guy with my feet, blonde hair, blue eyes, right? Like, all right, fine. Like he's a little bit of a scumbag, but then you've got like basically like one of them's like a Vietnam War veteran or something like that as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is going like? This is like okay, I'm going to like this is the Western boy like going to take on the Western patriarchy or whatever instantiation.
The World War II guy is the hero with the Medal of Honor. And the Vietnam vet is the bad guy.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's deep. It's
deep. There's a lot of like fatherhood, like lack of male good exemplification of a male fatherhood figure during that's happening during that time period. Like there's a lot going on there, and it's not my framing. I did take it from guys who had better perspective on it than me. But when they pointed it out, it was like, yeah, that is really happening. You see that. Like this is why I'm not gonna pretend, right? I have Eastern icons, right, in my room, but I'm a Latin Christian. I love Thomas Aquinas. I love Latin, right? Greek is cringe, Hebrew is cringe.
I'm
You know,
not going to go so far as I'm going to stop you at cringe. You just said it's for the experts.
All right,
it's
Father.
for the experts.
Sorry. Sorry.
No,
Father.
I agree.
Okay.
Greek is cringe, and I shouldn't have to take a test on it.
Greek is way too difficult. We're all in agreement on that. Greek is awful. The verbs are just outrageous. Verbs have no right to be like that. But cringe is a little too far.
No, that's
correct.
right. No, you're right, Father. Thank you for correcting me there. We are. No, that's correct. Now, like, but the point being is, like, I love Latin Christianity, and like, that's I understand where my faults are, in the sense I got the Eastern icons, but that's ours anyways, you know.
Yeah,
but I'm not
look
gonna
at
be...
look. How many times have you watched the intro to this channel? Right? It's the mosaic and the Lateran Basilica. Right.
Oh,
Jonathan
right.
Pageau would look at that and feel perfectly at home.
Yeah.
Right. It's got St. Benedict on it. St. Benedict isn't common to Pageau, but he'd be like, yeah, you got the tree of life in the middle, and you've got John the Baptist on one side and the Theotokos on the other, and then these other Roman saints. And
right. Yeah. But that's the thing, though. You see it in all of its instantiations. But the problem isn't that, right? I'm pointing that kind of almost for fun, but that pattern that you see of this kind of the Western young men lacking good embodied exemplification of what it means to be a man, right? This is what like brings about something like Karate Kid and the Western Buddhists who didn't understand, who needed this abstract Eastern thing that was very far away, because they couldn't see any embodied positive example in their own lives.
Is this the Basilica di San Giovanni in Laterano? Is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah, like a 10th century mosaic.
Yeah.
It's back before the art in the West got weird.
The depiction of
it got weird in the 14th century.
Because we quote unquote
the accursed 14th century. We should always spit whenever we mention the 14th century to get that out of our mouths. Ugh.
Oh, hold on. I mean, there was Dante. I'm gonna.
Dante predates the 14th.
He was 13th to 14th.
Okay. He was mostly the 13th century.
He's much. He was an old man by the time he actually got to the 14th century.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah. Sorry, there was something I was going to circle back on, but conversations. It's fine. Yeah. This is gorgeous. I mean, man. Wow. Yeah. I mean, St. John the Baptist. Even he's got his St. John the Forerunner long hair. You know, he looks like he's that wild man out of the desert. I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, speaking of other interesting Western Latin art, I was looking at I read a fairy tale to my daughters about Mother Hildegard, and so I was like, who's Mother Hildegard? So then I looked up Mother Hildegard and was looking at some of her art, like her angelic hierarchies. Wow, that's interesting.
Oh man, she was just having migraines.
Yeah.
All of her visions were just migraines, man.
It's like, explain to me how migraines induce visions of the absolute. Like that needs more explanation than how anyone has a vision of the absolute. It's like, that just drives me nuts.
It's just way simpler to say, the Holy Spirit showed up, did some stuff. We don't really understand it. Then
it's like, no, but God primarily uses migraines to bring these things about. It's like, okay, fine, but like that doesn't explain where it came from. It's like,
yeah. Also, like, so what if it was?
Well, no.
Like, even granting that that's true, I don't think it like diminishes it.
That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say you're confusing causality there, right? It's like, if I'm sitting at home and 4,000 pounds of gold bricks fall through the ceiling because they fell out of an airplane, you could be like, well, those fell from an airplane. That's where they came from. I'm like, that's not.
Money still fell from the sky.
That doesn't really explain anything.
Yeah, but Ted, you're missing the fact that we're just one scientific discovery away from understanding migraines, and then we'll have the answer. And then we're one scientific discovery away from that answer. Right? It's because we went through this. It's the Higgs boson problem. The Higgs boson, they were referring to it as the God particle. And once they resolved it, and then they did resolve it, and now they have 6 more questions. And I'm like, all right, so you took one answer that once you had that answer, you would have all these answers. And then you got that answer. Now you have 6 more questions.
Listen, Mark, I just need another answer, right? Just one more answer. I promise you this will be the last answer. I promise you.
One hit, it'll be fine. It's the one hit. That's the Gnostic addiction right there.
Yeah.
Gnostic addiction.
I think it's the problem of trying to run material cause to the ground, because material cause doesn't have a ground. That's the whole point of it, is that you can only see things that are hylomorphic. And so the closer you get to materiality, the less being it has. Like, I don't know, man. That's kind of what it looks like to me.
Well, that goes back to the thing I came up with, 3.5 hours ago, whatever, right? Emergence is the process by which things appear, but emanation is the process which brings them into being.
Yeah.
We're working on that one. Well, obviously.
I just came up with that.
Obviously, God is creating it. Duh.
But yes. Well, but explain it, because I've been upset that no one's explaining emanation. They keep, like, John Vervaeke and Bishop Maximus did this three-part talk on some weird Orthodox channel, and Bishop Maximus is like, I love your explanation of emanation. Like, he literally didn't give an explanation. Like, what are you talking about? So I like that contrast, because that helps me to give myself and others a handle on it that I didn't have before. Because, obviously I'm trying to use non-religious terms for the meaning crisis people, so they don't get all caught up. Because the minute you say God, their brain shuts off and stops working. They go insane.
I was translating the meaning crisis language for the religious folks at home. Mark's just saying that God creates things. It's not that complicated, actually.
God is the source of being. Yeah. Actually, Mark, I thought that you might find something interesting that I forgot to bring with me, but it's a quote from a theologian speaking on the Holy Trinity, and is saying that because what made me think of you was your notion of the connection between what you call the meaning crisis and the intimacy crisis, and saying that what the revealed truth of the Trinity tells us is that the most fundamental reality is communion.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
The communion, interpersonal communion, is the most, words fail me. That's the basis of reality. That's the most fundamental, the deepest reality is interpersonal communion. And so it's like, if you have these things that are getting in the way of that, then, like, of course let's say you can't engage with things. I mean, even thinking about the word engage, it's just interesting. So I read that and I thought, Mark would probably appreciate hearing that, because of this connection between that's actually the most helpful way to think about what's the baseline, like, at least in terms of how far we can get down and think about things. It's like
without communion and relationship, and Vervaeke almost touches on this, that there is no thingness. I think there's a co-manifestation of reality, which puts a great burden on you, because everything you do matters, to Peterson's point, right? But no one touches that. And then you look at the, quote, Barbie movie, which is not a movie, by the way, and no one should watch it. You will see exactly what you bring with you. It's like the cave. It's like the cave in Star Wars, right? What's in the cave? Only what you take with you. What's in the movie? Only what you take with you to the movie.
Oh,
There's
okay.
right, but
That's why it's made $1 billion.
fundamentally, everyone gets separated. Like
Yeah.
Barbie and Ken get separated at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
On purpose. And I'm just like, no.
Mark, my friend who saw it told me about it. He's like, it was really interesting because, like, sort of against a lot of the things that you hear, like, it's very much presenting this, like, difference in masculinity and femininity. But he's like, I just didn't feel like they knew how to like land it or like how they were supposed to relate. I said, yeah. How many kids are in the movie? And he paused for about 4 seconds and goes, none, actually. I said, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, in the beginning, right? Like it doesn't. So when you think of subversion, you think like, oh, you're saying one message here, but you're giving one message underneath.
Yeah.
In that sense, there's no subversion in the movie because everything they say or do in the movie is contradicted explicitly. There's no implicit anything anywhere. It's peak postmodern. It's really amazing in some sense. It's like in one sense, it's an accomplished thing. I'm going to claim that if you would correctly critique this movie, you would actually go insane because it can't be done because there are points in the movie where in the same sentence they're contradicting the first statement they made. It's bizarre beyond all belief, and you see that when you look at the reviews. No two reviews are the same. I mean, and they have very little overlap.
Yeah.
It's
Mark,
weird.
Father, where did you put that? Was that in the Bridges of Meaning Catholic channel? No, that was on Marks of Wisdom. That was on Mark's Discord server. You dropped 2 articles from the same Catholic news source that were about the Barbie movie that were like here and here. One of them is like, this is like.
And note that one of them was written by a young woman, and that was like, oh, it was just all so wonderful. Another one was written by an older woman who was a PhD, and she was like, this is garbage, and nobody should watch it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I'm going to listen to the matron over the maiden here.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Who was it? Father, did you say something about no wonder it made $1 billion? Like, yeah, people want to look in mirrors like that.
Gosh, haven't you ever seen a group photograph? Who's the only person you look at in a group photograph?
Yourself.
You're just looking at yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. That happens. Human beings are like that. But yeah, gosh, if you could just hold a mirror up to people, obviously you're going to make $1 billion. It's so stupid. The only thing I'm upset about is that I never thought of it.
Well, Father, I mean, go and watch 3 or 4 of Paul Vanderklay's Randos episodes. I mean, it's like, why is everyone piling in line to get there? Because, like, what does Paul do?
He's doing motivational interviewing. They taught me this in seminary too. Open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. It's how you do pastoral work. Once they taught me that there was actually a framework you could use, all of a sudden I became way more comfortable talking to people because I don't do that naturally. But you give me the framework, and all of a sudden I can talk to anybody.
The counselor formula either.
Hmm?
It's not that far off from the formula they give you.
No, it was a therapist that taught me
guidelines they
this.
give you as a therapist. Either.
There was literally, they brought in a therapist to teach us how to do this, right? A good, solid Catholic guy, and it's like, okay, because I was actually, like almost my entire time in seminary, I was terrified at the prospect of dealing with somebody who was in pain. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And then in my last year of seminary, as a deacon, the counselor guy comes in and is like, hey, open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, summaries. That's what you do. I'm like, oh, I could do that. And then I get out in the parish and I just do that. And basically what it is it's a framework for you to tune into relating to somebody.
Okay.
And then all of the right brain stuff, like you just focus your attention properly, all the right brain stuff just kicks in. And I'll empathize with somebody. Mr. 3 percentile of agreeableness here.
Are you really? You're that low?
Well,
yeah, very low, very low. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
I like that.
And the interesting part is that in as much as you can do any sort of actual data about, psychology and therapy, at least, I think it's at least 35% of like therapy working is just people talking about their problems with someone who basically holds a mirror up and then figuring out their own issues.
Well,
Yeah, you're too
Some
close.
people
You can't
pitch
see
that a lot
yourself.
higher, but I think the lowest it'll go is 35% of the effectiveness of therapy is just having a conversation.
I mean, I think about so I look at like my peers and the number of them that are going to counseling or therapy is just astonishing. And they're people that I would look at and think, like, I wouldn't think you would feel like you need to go to therapy or counseling, but they do. And I don't know how much it's just messaging, but like, it's pretty wild how many people are going to counseling and therapy. And so I'm wondering, Emma, to your point, and Father Eric, to your point, the two things that I think are, one, I have family and close friends that I talk about all kinds of stuff with, like all kinds of stuff.
A lot of
The
people
other one
don't
is
have that.
Now that I'm Catholic, I go to confession, and I'm like, and so there's obviously the sacramental thing with confession, and I don't like that's the most important thing. But like, there's other stuff that's going on there too, and I think how much of this whole mental health crisis in terms of it needing to have a response of a service provided by professionals is actually just filling in the gap. Because if you start paying attention, there's a whole thing of like, there's all these different words in different languages for the time that you spend with the people that you live with, where you sit around the fire and talk about what your day was like. Like multiple European languages have words for that time. And it's like, when you're doing that, I don't know. So to hear both of you talking about that made me think, yeah, I wonder how much of this is that we've like, there's actually like structural components to the way that we view how our lives are supposed to work, that we just don't, we did have those times and we don't.
Catherine talks about this. She said it before on Vanderklay's channel. She says basically that therapy shouldn't exist. Like therapy only exists because people aren't going to church, and all therapy, the best therapy is done basically by pastors, roughly speaking. Right.
Yeah. And if the church was doing its job properly, then there would be no therapists.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and if there were enough priests for everybody to spend an hour talking to them when they needed to.
You don't need a priest though. You need a good small group.
Oh, that's fair.
You don't need a priest. Well,
like
and part of it's family alienation too, because
I think a lot of it's family alienation, or people feeling like they can't get into like real things with their friends because that'll scare them off.
Right, because that's the intimacy crisis, right? We're not close with our families, we're not close enough with our friends, we don't have quality relationships with the people around us. That's intimacy crisis stuff, and that's like, and that's everywhere. Look at Barbie. Barbie has no parents.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a great line in Barbie. I can't quote it exactly or anything, but effectively, the person who created Barbie is a character in the movie, and Barbie says, well, I think I want to become human. And she says, I can't do that. And Barbie says, but you're the creator. And she says, I can't do it. And I was just like, what? So like you're acknowledging your creator and you're saying the creator doesn't have the power. And then she doesn't even make it. There's so many stupid things. It's like, what? None of this doesn't make any sense. But the whole denial that the creator has any power over you and that it's your power and your choice alone is right in there. And it's just bizarre. It's so strange to me.
But so, Mark, I watched the trailer for it because it had that weird homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey, right? Like that right there. So you've got Barbie, the Barbie instead of the obelisk, right? The Barbie, and all the girls like throw their baby dolls away. It's like, can you see what's happening?
No, they destroy being.
Oh, they destroy them.
They smash the dolls. They break.
Oh, it's so much worse. Right. Because if you're going to have children, you probably won't look like Barbie unless you're one of like 0.1% of women genetically.
That's right. You shouldn't have children. You should break the babies, and instead your ideal should be woman in bathing suit who's
So Mark, but then listen, Barbie according to you, goes to her point of origination and says, I want to be a human. And the woman who brought her forth says, I can't do that. It's like, what do you mean you can't do that? Bringing forth people, only women can bring forth people. You're the only person that can do that.
Right. That's what I mean.
Isn't it women and men?
She can't. That's why she made Barbie, who's a sterile plastic piece of plastic. I think I said plastic twice, but when you're talking about Barbie, that's appropriate. And it's like Barbie is like a mimetic prion, right? She when you throw Barbie out in the world, what does it do? It makes more people who make Barbies instead of babies. It's like,
And that's because the creator did not engage with the world in a feminine, motherly way, but instead engaged in masculine production of goods and services.
Literally a ghost inside a locked hidden room inside the corporation. For real.
Wait, say that again, Mark. Say that again.
She's a ghost locked in the room, in a hidden room inside the corporation in the movie.
Yeah. So Mary Harrington in her conversation with Jonathan Pageau, which had some great, I think it was in that part, which had some great stuff in it. Hi, Jacob. Where she was it was Mary Harrington somewhere where she was talking about this thing where we were like slowly asking corporations to take over more and more of our like natural bodily processes. Dude, that one's been in my head I was up in the northwest part of the state, and there's a sign that was like, dehydrated, come in for IV therapy. I'm like, do you not know how to drink water? Like, where are we? I don't understand anymore. It's like, come in for IV hydration and ketamine therapy. And I'm like, okay, we're at this place where it's like, I literally can't regulate the biochemicals in my body anymore. So I'm going to go to this clinic. So Mark, when you're like, yes, the thing that creates is a ghost locked in a room in a corporation. I'm like, yeah, that's how we think about it. That's exactly right.
And it has no power. Ultimately, you have to do it. You have to transcend to become human. It's so bizarre. Dude, the whole thing is so bizarre. No one should watch that film. It is not a movie. It is not a movie. I deny that it is even a movie.
That ship has sailed.
Okay, Father Eric, did I hear you say the creator did not engage in the world in a feminine way?
No, that was a reference to this character in the Barbie movie.
In the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
The context
like
makes
the actual.
Yeah.
The actual creator.
I know, Jacob. All the hairs on the back of my neck stood up for a second too, until I realized what Father Eric was saying, and then it was fine.
I wasn't paying too much attention, but then I heard him say that, and I was like, "But you guys have Marian devotion, yeah."
Is that what summoned you, Jacob?
That's what.
No, actually, what summoned me was I finished writing the bylaws for my new corporation.
Oh, great!
Oh, the Fountain of Comfort thing.
Correct.
That one.
The Fountain of Comfort.
Yes.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, at 8:00 today. So in 53 minutes, we're having our first board meeting.
That's very exciting.
Cool. Congrats.
And then I'm going to start asking all of you for money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, now we're on the internet. Here we go.
I'm not even monetized yet. I'll be monetized tomorrow, though.
Really?
Hooray!
Yeah.
No, the Shadow Matriarchy is the other nonprofit.
But we don't talk about that.
The other nonprofit, I have no idea what's going on with that one. I'm hoping Father Eric does, but shh.
I didn't realize you had something called the Shadow Matriarchy.
The Shadow Matriarchy is how I was describing the whatchamacallit, Joyful Mother of
Grim Grizz has a Shadow
children.
Matriarchy.
Yeah. Well, that's where I stole it from.
Yeah, and if you hadn't, fixed your cat, you might have a Shadow Matriarchy in your house. But now that's ship sailed.
I do have a Shadow Matriarchy. Happy and Shadow are both female. So.
But I'm saying, like, is she gonna have kittens?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whenever Happy, and it doesn't happen very often, whenever Happy starts humping other dogs, I say, Happy, you were female and now you're fixed. What are you doing?
No, broken. The dog is now broken, not fixed. I don't know why they call it fixed, and they literally broke the thing.
Wow, Mark, that's so
Don't worry.
true. It's like, hey, we fixed your dog. We fixed your cat. It's like, oh,
I
hold on.
was about to make the same point, to be honest.
That's amazing.
Okay,
That's why I like you,
I did not want to deal with animals in heat. I just did not.
No, nobody's saying you made a bad decision.
No,
but
no.
But
ontologically,
it was
you do
breaking the
break
cat,
them.
not fixing the cat.
You are
Yeah.
breaking them.
Yeah.
A functional and healthy organ was rendered non-functional.
Okay.
That's amazing. Well, you just like you reach carrying capacity of an apartment very, very quickly when it comes to animals. You know.
Yeah.
So
Most apartments won't let you have more than 2.
oh. Which is funny that they don't consider you an animal. So there you go. All of our evolutionary biology stuff, they can't get it in their heads.
No, it's how many freeloaders? 2 freeloaders per apartment max.
Uh-oh.
Wow, Jacob was violating some
Also,
kind of
well, they're
biology.
legally not allowed to count kids in that number. So
Yes. For now.
I'm remaining optimistic about this one.
Well, look, it's either going to be the fur babies are going to be treated like children, or the children are going to be treated like the animals.
True.
I really wish I could argue against you, but I can't.
I know you just
Yeah.
make me feel sick.
Yeah.
I see that trend. Right?
It's so well because we like looking in mirrors, and the fact is that weirdly, cats and dogs are actually more mirrors of ourselves than our own biological children.
Well, yeah, they don't have their own personality.
They don't
Yeah.
have that.
I mean, they have a little bit of
the
their
same
own
kind of
personality,
personality. Yeah.
but you're going to put a lot more of yourself into them, I think, just because there's what?
There's
What
more
is there?
space there.
It's more like there's less written in,
Yeah.
and they're dependent on you for food, and they don't know how to get it themselves.
Well, that's
Well,
also true,
That
children.
applies to kids for a while, though.
It's also probably easy to project a personality onto something that doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
I actually think they need you in the ways you want them to need you, and people need you in the way they need to need you. I think that's a
And
lot
in known ways, in limited known ways.
in limited node ways. Yeah. The demands that they can make on you are limited, but you still feel good about. I don't know, Jacob. You're probably the most forward pet owner of any of us. What is it that makes you have happy in the shadow of death in your life?
Okay, so having a dog was literally saved my life.
Okay.
I was I suffered from what used to be called agoraphobia and is now referred to as panic attack disorder. There was about a year of my life that I could not leave my apartment to save my life, literally. Like I couldn't even go food shopping. And the worst possible therapist in history had suggested I get a dog, which I did. And walking that dog made it possible for me to leave my apartment. And I eventually, my previous dog, which you saw the pictures of, Duke, he became an actual special assistance dog. And when he died, I got happy as a replacement, but I couldn't train her. She's actually too smart to be a special assistance dog. And because it's really boring work. And so I had a decision to make whether I was going to get rid of Happy somehow and find another dog to train or stop using a special assistance dog. So I still have Happy. But when I decided to go into psychotherapy, I was like, you know what? The best advice, despite all the medicines, which I am very, very, very grateful for psychoactive medication, despite all of the therapy, the best single thing for me was my dog, and I knew some people are dog people, and I said, you know what? I need to learn how to take care of a cat so that if I was going to recommend to somebody to get a comfort animal, I would know how to do that. And so
Shut up.
Now,
Right there.
make the cat away if you take him. Come on.
I'm guessing that was not the answer you were anticipating.
No, that's great. I really wanted to know. I look, I'm not down on pets at all. When you see, well, what I see is like lots of very wealthy people who have clearly chosen to not have children and instead have dogs that are probably on the verge of dying because of how obese they are.
Yeah.
And then you see that pattern over and over and over, or you see young childless couples who have no intention of having children and instead have an extraordinarily well-groomed animal that they probably paid like $2,000 for, that they like take on dog vacations. You're like, you start to try to figure out what's going on there. So no,
Well, those two things are linked. Look,
yes,
human beings are not
things.
solitary animals. Individual human beings cannot live by themselves.
Yeah.
That's just bad. And the Bible says,
it is not
Lo
good.
tov lihiot adam levado,
Yes.
which means precisely what you just said, but
Yeah.
in the original. It is not good for man to be alone. And so, the two are in fact linked. At the same time, like, I think the solution is more animals, not less animals.
Well, yeah. So, and in the right place. And I mean, I think so I had this wonderful memory where I grew up in a pretty rural area, but we're not agricultural. So it's, one of those like bunch of houses, they all have like 10 to 40 acres on them. And our neighbor, they had some animals on him. His friend needed somewhere to keep these two cows for a little while they were moving, some dairy cows. And so he came over and he built this fence. It was maybe like a 3-acre paddock. And at one point I was over there and like his dog had come over and I can't remember what all. At any rate, he goes down to the cow and he's like just this country guy and he's standing there and there's like the donkey that was with the cow and her calf and like this dog and maybe some chickens, but they're all just like standing around him and just like gazing on him.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this moment where I was like, there's this really weird thing about like the farmyard and Eden that are like really weirdly similar. And like I've been around enough that was a mosquito, enough farmyards to know that like it doesn't feel like Eden when you're there, but there's this sense of like this communion that's going in a whole lot of different directions. That's just and like man as this center point, this like ordering point for all of that. That I think that when you get out of the agricultural world, it's just like really hard to see it anymore.
You lose the hierarchy. That's why you need the animals. Because there's a hierarchy to the animals, and the animal hierarchy leads up to you, right? And then you get that sense of that depth, that vertical causality everybody keeps talking about. That's where it comes from, seeing the depth of the hierarchy. And animals help add that depth to the hierarchy, to the vertical causality, so that you start to understand that whole thing better.
Yeah, it's also in their proper place as well, and so like the pig is meant to be there for a while and then slaughter it. It's not meant to be there as a pet, right? The dog, my beagle, my stupid beagle Ruby that I have at home, right? She's meant to follow her nose, so like she's stupid for a reason. She's meant to just follow her nose so that we can hunt whatever we need to hunt, and then you might have a Jack Russell, for instance, to flush out the rabbits from their holes.
Yeah.
I'd also like to point out that when God says that it's not good for man to be alone, that is after he made all the animals and just before he makes another human being.
So it's specific to it can't be you and your pets, you Muppet. I think that's what I mean.
Right. You take the boys out hunting with the dumb beagle, and then you've got the whole hierarchy there.
Well, there's this interesting thing of seeing that like we're both animals and more than animals, and like until you have like a second data point, how can you tell? You know, it's So there's this a good relationship with animals can actually probably help you not treat other people as mere animals, which is like counterintuitive. Yeah.
No, because if you don't know any better, well, that's where equality doctrine comes from. Everyone's equal because everyone's just a people. It's like, no. And then they try to drag animals up and drag other people down. Some people we're not equal. Our conversation earlier, right, Ted? There's some people you know, and you're like, boy, that person's so much smarter than I am. And then they make mistakes too, but that doesn't make us equal, even though they make mistakes. Like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, and again, it's defining that criteria, you know, and so
or seeing it. You can't define it. That's the problem. You need to participate in it, and that's why you need to be on a farm or have pets, because you can't book learn it. You can't we talked about this in the beginning. You can't book learn this stuff. You have to experience it in order to know it in the participatory fashion, and that's how you become familiar with it.
Yeah. There's a really interesting part too in Paralandra where the green lady at the end says something basically about it's not even at the end, where she basically says like part of what it means to be an animal is to be being drawn upward, which I just thought was really interesting. And like when you think about what we've done with what we do with domestication is like we render. I think people tend to take a really hard view on domestication in general, is that we've broken wild animals, but like in other ways, we're actually elevating to this capacity to have some kind of a communion with humans that they wouldn't be able to otherwise.
Yes.
Besides the fact that it is the glory of the animal to be eaten, because now they are participating in the body of a being that can be united to the creator God of the universe. And what greater glory could be availed to a cow or a chicken, than to be part of a person? So.
Right. There's a donkey that talks to a wicked prophet in the Bible, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that is too. Do you think but you don't think donkeys are always just like have got that bottled up, and occasionally they're given speech like?
Actually, that's what. So I translated once a long letter by a particular rabbi, because he goes through and gives all the biblical reasons why obviously animals do have souls, and it's like a 6-page letter, and finding all translating it was one of the hardest translation jobs I've ever done in my whole life. But I did translate it to English, and it's very, very hard to understand if you don't have a solid foundation in Judaism. But he actually brings Bilam's donkey, and he's like, see, it says that God opened its mouth, meaning there's a closed mouth there.
That's interesting.
If a dog or a donkey or one of the higher animals walks into a room with a coherent group of human beings, they could probably figure out who's in charge.
Yeah.
The animals,
Animals absolutely can't, right? You take me out to the barnyard, not my place, they know that the farmer's in charge and I'm not.
Yes, yeah. I remember a similar thing happened when I drove cattle in my cousin's farm. So my auntie, who's familiar to the cows, was like, "You stand back, don't look at them in the eye, and that'll be that." They start running. I mean, cows can be quite majestic when they're running full tilt, but then you're also seeing them run towards you. And they all of them, just before they got into the little road that we were going to drive them down, they all just stop, even though I'm just sort of standing here looking around, whatever, they all stop and stare. And then they hear the call from my auntie and then go, oh, okay, let's go.
Boy, cows feel silly until you've got about 15 of them staring at you in running distance, and then cows are not silly at all.
No.
Very stressful.
Okay, I want to tell my favorite story about my dog Duke. So late at night, it was like 10 o'clock at night. I took Duke to the park and I let him off leash. And I'm sitting there with my phone, just playing with my phone. And this homeless guy walks up to me and starts asking for money. And I never give homeless people money. I seriously believe if you stabbed them, it would be kinder than giving them a dollar bill. I seriously believe that. And so I was like, no. And he starts walking away. He was about, 15, 20 feet away from me. It's dark. I have no clue where Duke is. If I had called Duke, I'm not sure Duke would have come. Duke was even more shy than Happy is. Like anybody, and Happy's very shy. He would not protect himself for anything. But the guy turns around and says, you shouldn't be playing with such expensive toys so late at night in the park. Meaning my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And there were other people in the park. There was lights. I was bigger than this guy. He was drunk. But somebody says something like that, you kind of, you get your gander up. I didn't stand up. I was sitting down. I didn't say a word, nothing. Out of nowhere, Duke is running at this guy. I have no clue. It must have been some sort of pheromone something.
He could hear his voice. He could hear it in the voice, man.
Yeah.
Animals are used to people. They know what we mean.
But I didn't say anything. How Happy knew?
He knew the threat.
Yeah.
You heard the threat in the other guy.
But it was a threat to me.
Yeah.
Oh, Duke. I called Duke Happy. But Duke wasn't anywhere even near me. It was the strangest thing in the world.
Dogs have good ears, man.
I remember being brought in when I was a little 4-year-old to my nan's house in the boxer. My dad was just like, "Listen, just be relaxed. Don't just be relaxed around him." He's not like it. And the boxer was like, he was lovely. Oscar was lovely, and you just realize you get a sense eventually, especially as a kid, this guy knows what I'm about. Either not on a high explicit level, but on the kind of am I afraid, am I not sort of level. So.
That's why I don't like people who don't like dogs. I honestly, if you don't like dogs, I understand if you're allergic, but if you don't like dogs and you're not from a culture, when I grew up, dogs were considered vermin in Iran. Oh. There were wild packs of dogs running around and they were scary and nobody ever brought a dog inside.
Typical Persians. Persians, Far Easterners hating the symbol of Rome.
Well, it's a Muslim thing.
Eagles?
Oh yeah. Oh, in Islam, bringing a dog into your house is considered a horrible thing to do. Yeah. Okay. And so my parents were always scared of dogs. I have family who are scared of dogs. I kind of understand that. But when I had my insurance store, my dad was like, "Why do you bring your dog? You're going to lose clients." And I was like, "I don't want to have clients who don't like dogs."
I just want the dogs to keep their paws on the floor.
Yeah.
100%. Your dog jumps up on me. I'm like, you belong on the ground, kid. Don't put your paws on my casing.
That is a well-behaved dog can be trained to do that. And
the dog we had growing up, Bear was trained not to jump at all. He was a big dog. Cool. He was a Norwegian elk hound, so a big, shaggy, slim dog. And So he would not jump up on the furniture. He would not jump up on guests. And he easily could have jumped over our fence in the backyard, but he would not. He would just put his paws up and look over the fence at
Wow.
passerby,
That's
which
a
must
good
have been
boy.
quite the sight, especially
Yeah.
because for most of his life, we lived in South Carolina, which is not the place to have a shaggy sled dog.
No.
We would
Yeah.
go and like just brush hair off of him every day, and it would go floating away in the wind.
But that's submission. I could jump over this fence, but it's a fence. I'm gonna respect the fence. That's submission. Like yes, that's correct. You could do a lot of things, but you submit and don't do the things you could do because it's better for you to submit.
And he was a good dog, and we took him for walks and fed him, and everybody was happy. And anytime somebody knocked at the door, he barked his head off. Mission accomplished.
That's what,
Nice.
Yes, that's what dogs are supposed to do. Right. That is correct. Good dog. Good dog.
Good dog. Yeah. My parents' dog is probably like nearing the end of her years.
Mhm.
Sad.
What was
Patterson's.
the-
I was a sophomore in high school.
Yeah. So like, I know I already answered this question in my head, but like, yeah, we can kill our dogs, right? We can put our dogs down. That's okay in Catholicism, right?
Yep.
Cool. All right.
They don't. So an animal doesn't have anything that they can do with suffering.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
You, if you're a Christian, and that's at least half of the screen here, you could unite your sufferings to the suffering of Christ on the cross and participate in his salvific action.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. 'cause
I'm
that's
sure
the-
Judaism has some way of handling this, and Mark's already had it figured out forever. So, like, whatever. We don't need to tell him anything.
Yeah.
So, anyway, because we can do something with suffering, we're expected to, but animals are not able to participate in that level or in that way. So,
Yeah.
it's just pain for them, and yeah, if there's suffering that they can't escape, and it's not like a temporary passing thing, then the way you treat an animal mercifully is to put it out of its misery, which is
Right,
not the way
right.
that you treat a human being.
Well, that's the thing. That's
Right.
when that gets flattened out. That's when that hierarchy gets flattened out. It's humans are just animals. And then you get the whole euthanasia, the murder, question in society.
So we make a qualitative difference between human and like human life is not like animal life. Like
Mhm.
just that's the first thing. Second thing is for a Jew, we have a commandment, you shall choose life. So that's why it is prohibited for us to participate in euthanasia. But actually, I'm not even sure. Like, while I certainly support being against euthanasia, I'm not sure we demand of
Yeah.
Gentiles not to kill themselves. We do demand of Gentiles not to kill other people.
That's a plus.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if suicide is. I'm just not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Murder is wrong.
sure. Glad we're all in agreement on that one. Taking an innocent life, not good.
It's almost like that's in the book that you guys share in common or something.
It is. It
Weird.
is.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, today I heard a scholar of religion talking about. He was defending Satanism, believe it or not.
Wonderful.
Yeah, there was a link on my Discord, and he's like, "Yeah, there's no evidence that our legal system is based on the Ten Commandments," and I'm like, "You're an idiot."
Well,
Yeah.
What they really need to have is Dennis Prager come in and sit on them.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know what that was a reference to, but it was funny anyway.
No. I don't want Dennis Prager to argue with them. Right? So Dennis Prager's all about like, the 10 Commandments are the foundation for a rational and healthy society, which they are. He's not wrong about that. So we can go ahead and agree with that. But I don't want him to even argue with this guy. Just sit on his head.
Right.
That'll do it.
Exactly.
There's no need to dignify that with a response. Oh, goodness.
No, it's just, it's so obviously wrong. Like, our legal system was explicitly based on the Bible.
We have a portrait of
Yep.
Moses in Congress.
There's got to be at least one Hillsdale online class about that.
The distinction between intentional murder and unintentional murder is directly out of the Bible.
Right.
We make that distinction in our laws because the Bible makes that distinction.
Well, but ultimately there is no evidence. But at that level of evidence, there's no evidence for anything, and that's that's the postmodern skeptical critique right there. It's ultimately there's no evidence for anything because you can't. There is no standard by which to judge, and that's how they get around these things. That's how they weasel around the law, which is Foucault's original intent.
Honestly, I don't even think this guy was thinking at the level you are. I think he was just ignorant.
But it's not about that, right? It's about the fact that we've given people permission to act like that. And so that there's always a way to say, no, I know the standard of evidence, and here's what I set it at in my head. I'm not saying they do it rationally and consciously. I'm saying we've given them permission to do that, and that's the problem.
Speaking of religion and law, I wanted to ask you, Father Eric, about your experiences getting trained to be a canon lawyer. Like,
How
did
did
you
some of that?
learn? What was it like?
Yeah, sure. So I took 4 classes this summer, 2 in June, 2 in July. This was at Catholic University of America, which is both we'll say a United States university and a university in the pontifical system, because of course we have our own accreditation for our own degrees. That would be something that Paul Vanderklay would be like, wow, about.
Nice.
And don't you get a version of the priest hat if you graduate from a pontifical university, even if you're a secular scholar?
I will have the right to wear a beretta and a cassock with green trim, which I think is just going to be super sharp. And I don't care what the rules are. I'm just going to wear it.
Wear it. I like it.
One of my classics professors had a beretta instead of the doctoral hat because he graduated from a pontifical university.
Yeah. So I took General Norms 1 that covers canons 1 to 95. Plus an introduction to the study of canon law. I took particular churches, which was things like bishops and their equivalents in law, dioceses and their equivalents in law, diocesan synods, parishes and pastors, that sort of thing. I took the juridic structure of matrimony, which covers the canons on marriage. And that's not the only time we're going to see marriage, because there's also matrimonial jurisprudence, because we have to do so much of that. And
that one must be one of your most complicated ones.
Yeah, because, well, we won't get into that. And then I took a class that was basically the canons on 5 of the 7 sacraments.
Ooh.
It's like the other 5, they can all just get into 1. Yes, that's it
Which were the 2
Whoa.
that you didn't learn?
Trip.
Holy orders and marriage. They'll be coming. They've got their own.
They've got their own courses.
They've got their own courses. Yeah. Because marriage gets really complicated because the Latin Church, unlike the Eastern churches, allows women to be ministers of the sacrament.
Right. Yeah.
Right, because the ministers
but only if they're married.
The ministers of marriage are the couple getting married.
Right. That
Not the
actually makes
priest.
things super complicated.
Yes.
And
I bet.
And in the Eastern
kinda-
churches, and I'm not
it's a
just
cool
talking about
thing,
the
though.
Orthodox. I'm not just talking about the Orthodox, but in the Eastern Code of Canon Law, that's not the case.
That's
The Eastern,
fascinating.
it's the priest who's witnessing the vows. That's the minister of the sacrament.
Well, and so many people don't know that either.
Wait,
Yeah.
what kind of minister are we talking
That the
about?
minister of the sacrament is the couple getting married, not the priest.
But not in the Eastern
Officiating the
Catholic
marriage.
churches.
Right.
And I'm
I
like,
always kind of wondered
how
if
are
it
we
could
in
have been
communion with them?
different.
Yeah.
And I guess it doesn't matter, which is nice.
Wait, so is this minister of which sacrament?
Marriage. So
Yeah.
the
Women
Western,
can be the minister of marriage?
No,
Yes.
the couple in the Latin rite. It's the
They
couple,
are.
husband and wife who are the ministers of the sacrament to one another, and the priest
Oh,
is
okay.
the church witness.
and here's the fun part, is that they do it in persona Christi, just like I do it. And so I
Man.
suppose,
You know, I wish we'd talked a little bit more about this before I got married.
yeah.
I would
So
have really liked to be like really aware of what was going on.
yeah.
I was like vaguely aware, but
So the groom, I guess, is in the person of Christ, the bridegroom, and
Yeah.
the bride is in the person of Christ as the church.
I don't
Struggle.
know.
And it,
I
and
don't
it
know.
just it just starts breaking things out there.
All I say, yeah,
In the
go on.
Eastern Church, it's just like, yeah, no, it's the priest, like it always
Yeah.
is.
But all I'd say to that, Father Eric, is like a Middle Easterner has never romanced anyone, right? Like all of the Eastern, the Greeks, like they're just it's all done by the family. It's all, however, Ernesto, he'll like there's a whole thing that, and of course that became a problem because there's a reason why you need to be there to witness the marriage, Father Eric.
Oh
because
yeah, all those
people were
clandestine
administering the
marriages.
sacrament to each other in private with the secret love vows or whatever, and it's like that just complicates things.
Yeah. So thank the Council of Trent for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the sort of things. It's studying canon law doesn't make things clearer. It makes things more complicated.
Yeah.
as with
Okay.
many higher levels of learning and education.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, so that cassock with green trim, if you want it in wool, it's like $200.
Oh, that's a steal right there. $200 any day of the week.
Not bad.
I'm used to the church tax, man. I when I was in Rome, I bought a cassock for about 400, 500 euro.
Which
Well, I bet-
which store did you go to?
Macchinelli. It's right down the street from the Vatican on the Pio Borgio.
Is that that's not
That sounds
Gabriella,
like the,
right?
the
No, it's
priest
not
tourist
Gabrielli.
trap
No.
Oh
store.
man.
The
No.
priest
So the big, the fanciest
For everyone
one,
who wants to say they got a cassock in Rome.
they go to Gamarelli. That's
Gamarelli.
it's the primo one, and then like right
Are they
across
the really
street.
fancy rosary that Jonathan Rumi just did a commercial for?
No,
Or
no,
was
they
that a
don't. They don't
different
do
thing?
rosaries. They make money.
Okay.
No, they don't make money because they don't sell high volume items. Oh,
Ah, Gamarelli,
artists.
that's it.
they're artists. Yeah, Gamarelli. That's the really fancy one.
I went there.
Barbaconi's right across the street. They've got nice stuff. They've got really nice, inexpensive clerical shirts that last forever. So that's good.
Nice.
And Macchinelli, it was just this tiny little store. And my buddy got a really nice cassock there. I'm like, I'm just going to go get one off the rack. I'm not going to do this custom ordered business.
What? You all got it off the rack? Oh,
I got it off the rack.
okay.
Nice.
All right. Well, it still probably fit pretty well considering. Like,
all
I
respect
imagine it's
is gone lost right there.
no.
You're pretty tall, Father Eric. I'm surprised they had one your size.
It's an international hub, man. They get all sorts of priests there. They get giant Nigerians and Dutchmen coming in.
Dutchman, yeah, big Dutchman.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So, marriage as a sacrament gets more complicated because we let women be ministers. So, hey Trey,
As with many things, when women get involved, it gets more complicated.
every time, and that's
Women
what
make
God made
everything
you to
more
do.
complicated. Can confirm.
That's what God created you to do. Yeah.
But otherwise, then the canon lawyer school going good. So how many semesters do you have to do? How long is this going to take?
I've got another 3 summers.
Oh
Oof.
no.
Wow.
And
You
I'm
might
taking-
graduate after me.
It's online classes during the year and then summer classes for 3 years, 50-page thesis and a 1-hour comprehensive exam, and I'll have the JCL after my name.
So you have to go to Washington again every summer for that period of time. Oh, okay. All right.
It's big boy school.
But you get the green cassock at the end.
I
You
get the green cassock at the end, man. That's what's
That's a good deal.
That's
Actually,
the
important
Keep
part.
you going.
besides
And the
just
silly
obedience to my bishop. The green cassocks what's keeping me going.
I did
Yeah, the
I
green
did 4
cassock
years
and the
in
fact
undergrad.
that
I didn't
someone
get
told you to
cool,
do it.
cool clothes.
If you'd gone to a proper school, you would have gotten cool clothes.
True. It's true.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Jacob?
It was a good start. I think you need to do a video series: how to become a canon lawyer, how to become a canon judge, how to become.
I don't want to give people encouragement in this. It's like no, seriously. It's a tiny world. Does it need to be any bigger? And there aren't a whole lot of positions in it. And because according to the teaching of Vatican II, in order to exercise power of governance in the church, you need to be a cleric. It
There
means there's a lot of
really aren't that
position-
many positions for lay.
Yeah,
canon
there are
lawyers.
some, but it's usually like the bishop already knows a guy and says, or a gal, and says, "You're going to go off to canon law school here, and you're gonna take this position as chancellor of our diocese."
But then wouldn't they? So that they still aren't clerics in that case. They're just
They're not clerics. A layman or a laywoman can serve as a judge on an ecclesiastical case on a panel with 2 clerical judges.
Okay.
So
All right.
1 in every 3 can be a layperson.
Basically.
Well, I mean,
How many-
I was reading some blog posts from canon lawyer blogs,
Okay.
but
Which ones?
this was a while back, but they were all really trad caths.
Yeah.
They were like as you would expect, and they were defending SSPX, which.
Well, that whole thing is a mess. So,
It
like, canon law school is one of those places where if you've got 3 canon lawyers and you ask a question, you'll get 4 to 5 opinions. So they might be doing the whole defending SSPX canonically business just as an exercise. I don't know.
It seemed like they were pretty pro SSPX, and I think
And Pope Francis gave them faculties to hear confessions in 2015. So that also sounds like being pro SSPX right there. I don't know.
Right. They're in the canonically irregular position. So of course that's exactly where you're going to get all the.
That's my namesake.
arguing.
Everybody should defend Lefevreism.
Yeah, that's right. He's finally figured this out. I told Mark.
Yeah.
Like, was it when you were in DC that I told you about your last name in Catholic world?
No, it was before that. I knew about his hereditary.
I've been poking him about it for a while. Yeah.
Okay.
He has the exact same. He must be related to Marcel Lefebvre. I can't.
No, I
imagine
think
he's
he looked
not
into
related.
this. There's no.
No
No,
relation.
I don't think
No, 'cause
Marcel
we went
had any
through
French
Canada.
Canadian.
Yeah,
I don't
we're
think he had any French
French-Canadian.
Canadian.
We took off
Like,
a
it'd be
long
way
time
back
ago.
there.
We got the hell away from the Parisians a long ass time ago.
Wise, very wise.
You gotta realize how bad Parisians must be for somebody to leave France, which is relatively nice weather, to go to freaking Canada, which is an unlivable waste world of cold and beavers.
Yeah, I mean,
No
Paris
women.
probably didn't even
Well,
think all
beavers
that
could be
back then.
pretty good. That could be what's driving it.
Yeah, but there's no women either. French people around no women? That doesn't even make any sense. Sounds like
that's
hell
really
only
dumb.
works at that point. I don't.
Now, very few people know this, but if you really want to poke a Lefebvreite at SSPX hardcore sedevacantist,
SSPX is not formally sedevacantist.
They
Go
are.
on.
yeah,
Necessarily.
but
As an organization, though.
if you want to poke them, point out that Lefebvre admitted that his original ordination was done by a bishop who was later found out to have been a Freemason.
Okay.
And he admitted this himself.
Mhm.
And so if his original ordination is not well,
That's why you have three
bishops?
bishops. Yeah, you always
Oh.
have three bishops at an episcopal consecration.
Oh, really?
No, Episcopal, but it was his priestly
Oh, okay.
ordination. And if his ordination as a priest wasn't valid,
It would be
Is his-
valid.
it would. Oh,
Yeah.
it would. Shucks.
I mean,
Don't
it looks bad,
like
right?
don't
But
it?
like that's the beauty of the sacramental system is that if your minister is evil, that doesn't invalidate it. Thank you, St. Augustine, for figuring that out.
Yeah.
Well, hold on. No. Because I've heard people discussing this, and they said as long as the minister had the intent to do what the church does, and if he's a Freemason, he may have in fact had the opposite intent.
Yeah.
Thing.
I mean,
The odd,
Freemasonry-
it's
Isn't that the definition of a conspiracy theory?
Freemasonry is not incompatible with anything in Christianity. Actually,
it's completely incompatible with the church, since the church taught
you can get
at
excommunicated
that
for
time.
that. I think you could still get
Yes.
excommunicated for
oh
it.
yeah, no,
No.
and you
in
you
the
should.
80s, they in the 80s they kind of lightened up on it, but
but
this was way before the 80s.
Yeah, they shouldn't lighten up on that, but that's not the point. What I'm saying is the goal of Freemasonry and the way they structure their stuff is extremely Christian. Like there's very little stuff in there that you would find to disagree with, other than the fact that they don't do the Trinity thing, they don't do God. They're very
They
God
do
of your
God. Oh no,
understanding
they
sort of
definitely
thing.
do God.
Well,
They very
it's
much
not.
do God.
It's more God of your understanding. It's not. It's not.
To
There's
some
a
extent.
creator.
So,
They
so the
talk
Freemasons are a
about
12-step
John.
group?
It's
In a
very
sense,
weird.
they really are. It's a very, like, there's a reason why they have the G in the architects thing
Yeah.
and all that stuff, and they talk about the architect all the time. It's always the
Yeah, but
architect.
But it's not.
The architect.
Not. That's the issue. It's actually Freemasonry is actually Gnostic. It's just Gnosticism that follows a very Christian framework with tons of Old Testament biblical references.
Sorry, is there Gnosticism that doesn't follow a Christian framework?
Nope.
Well,
Mandaism.
yeah, a lot of it denies Christian framework, right? They just flat out they say no. The Ten Commandments, no, that was written by the bad God. So really, the commandments are right. There's outright.
That's still
denial of the
operating
frame.
within the Christian frame.
Yeah, even Mandaism. I mean, ultimately,
That's just saying
yeah.
that, like, secretly the Christian frame is
But-
the opposite.
Right,
of
but the Freemasons don't
good.
even do that. Is what I'm saying. Like they don't even do that. They're okay with most.
they're
of
much
the
closer
things.
to
They just
Christianity.
leave stuff out. They don't deny stuff outright in that way.
I have to go very soon. Father Eric, it looks like you're not on.
Yeah, there was a critical miscommunication that made this stream more exciting than it needed to be. I should have it fixed by next week.
Okay, if we need to do anything to fix it, let me know. And Mark, you're still an admin, but I'm gonna kind of head out because I have a meeting to go to.
My last point is that being a Freemason and validly performing an ordination are not incompatible. There we go.
Oh,
Excellent.
Yeah.
fire. Got that right in there at the end.
Yeah.
See you, Jacob. Have fun.
Oh, Jacob leaves.
He leaves. Hey,
Oh.
Chad.
It's 100% because of you, Chad. Take it
Yeah.
personally. Absolutely take it personally.
I'm going to.
Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna go and I'm gonna write a song about it. So,
Oops. Come back here.
Can't believe you guys. What's new? What are you guys talking about?
We talked about why pets are good as long as you're not being weird about them.
Since you're not a Freemason.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, people that like animals more than people always concern me.
They
People who
should.
don't like dogs are also concerning. So, yeah,
Yeah.
you got to figure that one out.
Yeah. Are you guys shut down or what?
I don't know. We've been going since the second start, almost for 2 hours now.
About 2 hours. So yeah, we usually don't go much longer than
But
2
right now,
hours.
actually, Mark is running the show because of the aforementioned miscommunications and the fact that I got here late.
There were lots of problems.
It's gonna go as long as Mark goes.
Well,
the man's got stamina.
I want
Not
Mark
anymore, man. I burnt myself out on Saturday between Friday night's live stream, Saturday's book club thing. Then I saw the Barbie movie. Then we did the Barbenheimer stream, which is doing gangbusters. It's almost up to 200 views just on my channel, right? And now I'm just like tired.
I want Mark to shut it down. I want Mark to go watch my latest video and like give it a comment.
Chad, I was dragged into this right from BOM, so I intended to watch your video next, and then I got Ted needed my assistance. So I apologize for the.
We needed somebody to administrate this stream.
Yeah, it happens. It happens.
Yeah. We have been going for like a solid 2 hours plus the aborted bit there. So Chad, you've got a new video on YouTube that everybody needs to go watch, or just Mark?
I think everybody should go watch it.
Everybody should watch it.
Why not? I'm been doing this thing lately where I'm trying to bring a counter narrative, a little bit of more of a balanced narrative to the cultural conversations that I see in the algorithms.
Yeah.
An admirable goal.
There's role for a trustworthy contrarian.
Well, I try to be as honest as I can, not just for the sake of it, but like if I notice something strange, I'm going to say it, basically.
Yeah. Like you were the one who pointed out that Sound of Freedom was an okay movie.
Yeah, it's just okay. Plus, I thought that there was nefarious actions taken to market the movie, which worked very well and for free.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean,
I don't know. Maybe they just took advantage of the evil that already existed and twisted it against itself, much like Jordan Peterson did with the left to monetize.
Yeah. No, my point exactly. I mean, that's
I like my boy Jim Caviezel. I
do.
He's a good Catholic kid. He torpedoed his own career playing Jesus in the Passion of the Christ.
I love Caviezel, and I love Passion. I was just pointing out what a possibility. Like, wow, like there's literally millions of dollars of free marketing.
Yeah.
Right.
So why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Good point.
So.
Good point. Well said.
Okay.
All right, guys. Well, go check that out. Tell me what you think. If you don't like what I have to say, let me know. I like that too. There's been kind of hit or miss. Some people are like, "You're heartless," and I'm like, "Whatever, dude. I'm trying to be honest, man." So
honesty is heartlessness, Chad. The truth doesn't care about your feelings. So yeah, you got to be careful for that one.
So,
alrighty,
wonderful.
And while we're plugging ourselves, it's not as big as Chad's, but Ted and I did a conversation on Tolkien's On Fairy Stories, which is on Ted's channel.
Ted's channel.
Oh, great! I don't
The
know what
Golden
Ted's
Echo
channel is, or I'd post the link.
Can you?
It's called the Golden Echo.
The Golden Echo. Okay.
I'm gonna drop a link. I'm gonna drop a link.
Perfect. All right, guys.
Drop a link, please.
Much love. Good night.
Where can I drop?
Can't you drop it in the commentsy things?
Oh, it's only going to go to my channel though.
Well, I just want to plug reuniting with the Western father figure, which I think was exemplified today. Submission, and that's it. That's it for me.
All righty. Well, let's call it a Sunday evening. Glad you all celebrated the Lord's resurrection, and God bless you all. Mark, pull us out.
Thank you much, guys. Have a lovely
right.
Sunday. Thanks for joining.